This Sunday on Capitol Connection, the feds dropped the hammer on Speaker Madigan's inner circle. Republicans continue their chorus of calls for the Speaker's ouster as a growing number of Democrats defect from his ranks. What it means for the Speaker's political future, and could he face criminal charges? And Illinois caught in the throes of the coronavirus, reaching record levels of hospitalizations, new infections, and deaths on the rise. Public Health Director Ngozi Ezike joins us. It's all coming up on Capitol Connection.
From the Illinois State Capitol Rotunda, Capitol Bureau Chief Mark Maxwell is asking the tough questions. This is Capitol Connection.
Welcome to Capitol Connection. I'm Mark Maxwell reporting from the Illinois State Capitol on this Sunday, November 22nd. Federal prosecutors dropped the hammer on House Speaker Michael Madigan's inner circle, though they did not charge him personally. 4 members of Madigan's inner circle now face criminal charges, 9 counts in a grand jury indictment for that corruption case, this conspiracy that circles around and emanated from ComEd, the state's largest public utility provider. The power players in it were 3 lobbyists, Jay Doherty, John Hooker, and Mike McLean, also the ComEd CEO at the time, and Pramajor. All 4 of them interacting in phone calls and emails the feds now list as evidence against public official A, Speaker Madigan, as well. On Friday, the Speaker defended himself after a written statement released the day before, in his first public statement on the record since this investigation began.
The pay-to-play quid pro quo situation outlined in these indictments released last night are unspeakably wrong. Anyone who concludes otherwise is insulting the public. If Speaker Madigan wants to continue in a position of enormous public trust with such a serious ethical cloud hanging over his head, then he has to, at the very least, be willing to stand in front of the press and the people and answer every last question to their satisfaction. Written statements and dodged investigatory hearings are not going to cut it. If the Speaker cannot commit to that level of transparency, then the time has come for him to resign as Speaker.
House Republican Leader Jim Durkin joins us now. His caucus just recently voted unanimously to bring him back for another term to lead House Republicans in the minority. Representative Durkin, Leader Durkin, good to have you back with us. Can you respond to Speaker Madigan's denials here? He still says that, look, nothing in this indictment against his allies indicts him. And he says, in fact, if the feds had incriminating evidence against him, they would have already brought those charges.
That's not true. The federal government doesn't work that way. They build their cases up from the ground, and they provide foundation for new charges against different individuals. I've seen this happen multiple times over the years, and that's how the U.S. Attorney's Office works. So this is a classic case of the U.S. Attorney's Office peeling the layers off the onion.
If Mike McLean doesn't tell the feds what he knows, and if Mike McLean doesn't incriminate the Speaker, isn't it possible the Speaker walks free here and never faces a criminal charge?
There's a lot of people say that they're not going to flip and they're not going to cooperate after they've been charged, but history shows that many of them at the end of the day do. So let's just see how this process works through the court system. If Mr. McLean and the other defendants feel that they have been wrongly accused of this crime, then we have a system of justice that they'll have to appear before a jury.
We see in the indictment the jobs. We see in the indictment the favorable legislation that you voted for, that you supported, that helped ComEd. But do you see anything new in this indictment that bridges the gap, that connects those two, that says this was for that, the quid pro quo?
The conversation that Madigan had through McLean with the President of Commonwealth Edison about placing an unqualified individual on the board of directors for ComEd, and also Mike McLean not accepting no for an answer for his friend. We are waiting for some documents also that we were told of that that Commonwealth Edison has in their possession, which has an email with the resume of Mr. Juan Ochoa, the unqualified individual that Mike Madigan was pushing to serve on the board of directors for ComEd. It's clear that Mike Madigan felt that ComEd was part of Madigan Incorporated, He had them in their back pocket, and that's what I see right now.
Why resume the special investigative committee if you believe that House Democrats already have the votes to deny Speaker Madigan the gavel? Do you want to see him expelled from the House as a member, or do you just want to see him denied the gavel?
I want him expelled from the House of Representatives. I don't trust the Democrats in the House. A lot of them say one thing in the press and that they will do something separately when it comes down to business. So we have an obligation. I filed that petition with the intent of getting to the truth of what Mike Madigan can tell us and what he knew about his relationship with Commonwealth Edison as was laid out in the DPA. Now we can go further. I want him to explain exactly whether or not the allegations in the indictment from yesterday hold water. But we have an obligation to our citizens, because I just don't know, and I can't trust the Democrats to say that that they won't be able to support Mike Madigan. We know Mike Madigan always, he finds a way to get votes, and he still has strong, powerful interests that are backing him. So he's not going to go down without a fight.
All right, House Republican Leader Jim Durkin, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and thanks for joining us. All right, we're back in a moment. Stay connected to the Capitol all week. Follow us on Twitter at CapConnectIL or watch reports from our Capitol team on WCIA3. You can also find us on Facebook or WCIA.com.
You're a person, not a credit score. But sometimes your score gets in the way of things you want to do. Personal consumer loans through NetCredit help you borrow up to $10,000. And you can check if you're eligible on netcredit.com without affecting your credit score. You may even be able to build your credit history as you repay. NetCredit, a more personal loan. Visit netcredit.com today.
Osling & Abbott, Illinois' largest bankruptcy-only law firm. Voted 2019's leading lawyer in bankruptcy and foreclosure defense. Just named a top 3 bankruptcy attorney. Call now for a free consultation. Osling & Abbott, Illinois' largest bankruptcy-only law firm, announces Zoom virtual intaking. It's your choice. Meet with our attorneys face-to-face or on a Zoom virtual office visit. Contact us at bcyhelp.com.
We drive everywhere to help our son reach his dream of becoming an elite swimmer. So we enrolled in the Know Your Drive program with American Family Insurance. It gives us discounts for safe driving and other benefits, like emergency roadside service, which comes in handy, no matter where his dreams take him. With Know Your Drive, save up to 20% and get closer to your dreams. American Family Insurance. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly.
The Spaghetti Shop, keeping your Italian favorites fast, fresh, and fabulous. There's nothing better than gathering the family around the table for a delicious traditional Sunday dinner.
Chicago Football Weekly, Saturdays at 9:30 on X49.
Call it a day.
One more post.
One more bucket.
There's always one more to be done.
One more field.
To be earned. To be found. For us, it always has been. And always will be. One more bushel.
The home office has taken on a new meaning. Let's update. Everything Amish handcrafted for the home. If you can envision it, we can build it. Learn more at prairiecommonscollective.com.
You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Joining us now are the 3 political and investigative reporters from WBEZ, Chicago's public radio station. Dave McKinney joining us from Chicago, also Dan Mihalopoulos and Tony Arnold, all 3 with us now. Dave McKinney, I want to go first to you, but what did you see in those charging documents?
Well, I mean, this was a groundbreaking set of indictments that moves this 18-month investigation into bribery involving Commonwealth Edison deeply into House Speaker Michael Madigan's inner circle. I mean, the person who I would argue is the closest Madigan confidant that he has had over decades in Springfield, Michael McLean, was indicted along with 3 other former ComEd executives and lobbyists. And this now presents a very serious legal problem for those individuals, obviously, but a looming legal problem for Madigan, and a more concrete political problem for him right now as he tries to round up votes for Speaker.
Speaker Madigan says it's not illegal to help reward someone or give someone a job, refer someone to even a lucrative job, or to make a referral on a law firm contract. He says those things are not on their own criminal, but when they're done in exchange for public business or legislation that benefits one business over another, or that allows a business to charge its customers higher rates, if that was done in concert, that's where it crosses that line of criminality. So was there something about this new indictment beyond maybe Jay Doherty's contracts that links those two together, this for that?
It's not there yet that we're seeing. I think if it were there, we'd be talking about a different story today in which Madigan would have been indicted. But we don't have that yet. Madigan denies wrongdoing. He's not been charged by the feds. And so as a result, what we get is this indictment where people are being accused of acting on Madigan's behalf, but not, according to this indictment, at Madigan's direction. And I think that that's a significant distinction that allows the Speaker to continue to say that he's not been charged with wrongdoing and has done nothing wrong.
The prosecutors point out and say they would use code to speak in secret about Speaker Madigan as, quote, our friend or a friend of ours. And you'd see that back and forth, the banter about let's not upset or provoke a reaction from our friend. Let's just sort of, and that was the way that Mike McClain would apply pressure. So even if federal prosecutors never can quite make the case all the way to Speaker Madigan, how does that language or that level of trying to escape scrutiny factor in on the minds of House Democrats as they look at who they might elect to be Speaker in 2021, Dave?
The math right now is not working for Michael Madigan as he's trying to secure votes to become House Speaker. I mean, we are seeing a steady drip of people within his caucus saying that they can't support him. And we saw, really, 3 new voices added today among his caucus members saying they would not vote for him as, for Speaker in January. And then we saw 4 other members kind of harden their opposition to him as well today. So far we know of 15 House Democrats who are on record as saying they will not vote for him in January. That takes him below the threshold of votes he needs in order to be reelected to another term as Speaker. So I think that most of the people who are in that column who are opposed to Madigan are really taken aback at what they're seeing spelled out in these federal charging documents that suggest that the leader of their caucus was involved in this corrupt effort, and so that's really kind of the problem. He's sort of become an albatross in their minds to a lot of what they're trying to do, and that comes on top of a pretty disappointing run here in the November elections in Illinois, where, there had been an expectation House Democrats were going to pick up as many, I've heard, 10 seats. There was talk of that a few weeks before the election, and of course that didn't happen. So Madigan really is struggling now, and at this moment, if the election were held, he wouldn't be Speaker.
Speaker Madigan is down, but may not be out just yet. He has been fighting this, declaring his innocence. Which do you think played the bigger role here, and would we be having this conversation today about this large a defection from Democrats if they hadn't lost seats to Republicans in November?
Yes, I think so. I think the magnitude of the corruption scandal is so great that that's what set this in motion. But it is interesting. It took electoral defeats, and it took the possibility that Mike Madigan dragged down the progressive tax, and Mike Madigan could drag down J.B. Pritzker when he runs for re-election in 2 years. It took all of that to really, it seems, put the final straw and really create a situation where maybe he will not be the Speaker as he has been for 36 of the past 38 years.
Do you see any sign that Speaker Madigan might actually resign? Or how many more votes would he have to lose? Do you see any chance that the Speaker doesn't fight this out all the way through to the January election in the House of Representatives?
Yeah, it's difficult to see him giving up because he's been in power for so long, and he is staunchly defending himself against the legal charges and saying that he's done good for the Illinois Democratic Party. Having said that, he's also extremely shrewd, extremely detail-oriented, as we all know, and I think he's counting his votes. And when you go to try, whether it's door-to-door or trying to see how many supporters you have in your own caucus, in this case, you're looking for pluses, right? They have these lists, and who are the pluses? Who are the people that are firmly in his column? And if he doesn't have enough pluses, I'm not sure at that point he's going to open himself up to that spectacle of possibly being defeated in a vote on the floor of that building that you're in right now. Having said that, right now I think they're working frantically to try to make some deals with people because that's how he's amassed power and that's how he's expanded his power and maintained it over all these years. As we see in this ComEd situation and in many other situations in the Capitol and even in neighborhoods here in Chicago.
All right, that's all the time we have for now. But Dave, Dan, and Tony, thank you. Also, a happy Thanksgiving to you and your families as we approach this holiday season. We have much more of our Reporters Roundtable available up on our Facebook pages. You can find the entire discussion all there right now. We're back in just a moment. Stay connected to the Capitol all week. Follow us on Twitter at CapConnectIL or watch reports from our Capitol team on WCIA3. You can also find us on Facebook or WCIA.com.
When you need to plan your week, check in with WCIA3's weather team for their 7-day forecast. Sponsored by Edelman. You'll know what the weather will be today, tomorrow, or this week. Count on Chief Meteorologist Kevin Lighty, Jack Gerfin, Amelia Henderson, and Jacob Dickey to give you the most accurate forecast. They'll help you prepare for your week with a 7-day forecast. From WCIA3, your local weather leader. Sponsored by Edelman Electric Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing.
Ready, set, internet. Extreme has the speed and price to get you online fast. Stop waiting and get going for as low as $19.99 a month for a year with speeds from 60 meg up to 1 gig. Powerful in-home Wi-Fi and 99.99% network reliability. Extreme has what you need to stay ahead and stay on track. Hurry and get Extreme internet for as low as $19.99 a month for 1 year. Dial 844-EXTREME2.
You and your pet have a lifetime of incredible memories. You absolutely can't imagine life without them. But when the time comes, you'll want to preserve the memory of everything they brought to you. Pause and Remember offers pet cremation as an affordable, wonderful, and loving option to remember your pet. They offer many unique items to memorialize, so you decide how you want to pay tribute to and celebrate your pet's life. You have a choice, so request Pause and Remember to your veterinarian or call our office directly. Pause and Remember in Champaign.
Are you ready to shop? Because you know we got the deals during the Black Friday Super Sale at Furniture Row. Right now, the more you buy, the more you save. Save $100 on every $1,000 you spend and watch the savings add up. Or get free gifts with qualifying purchase. Plus 7 years no interest financing and free shipping right to your doorstep. Did I mention 7 years no interest? Shop the largest selection at the lowest prices guaranteed. The Black Friday Super Sale, only at Furniture Row.
Ready to sell your home in 2020? With a guaranteed offer from Ryan Dallas Real Estate, skip the process of listing your home and go straight to sold. Closing in as little as 3 weeks. Stay hassle-free with Ryan Dallas Real Estate's guaranteed offer. It's selling made simple.
Don't look good.
Yeah, it looks like it's both. Just what I don't need.
This is what you do need.
Complete the application within minutes, and if approved, you may get the money you need as soon as the same business day. Get the cash you need fast. Apply online today. Go to cashnetusa.com.
I love to cook. It's my love language.
She's super cool. Cooks.
I love to cook for my child now. She's had garlic from day one.
Plays chess.
It's like so sexy.
And has a new venture. It's Cameron Diaz.
Cheers to Cameron Diaz.
Then,
I forgot the turkey.
Day 10 of our 12 days of Thanksgiving can be summed up in 2 words.
Turkey harm.
Next, Rachel.
Monday at 3 on WCIA3. You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
By many metrics, Illinois is experiencing right now some of its worst days in this coronavirus pandemic. Joining us right now is Illinois' Department of Public Health Director, Dr. Ngozi Ezike, who's been spearheading, along with Governor Pritzker, the state's response to COVID-19. Dr. Ezike, good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark.
First of all, we're at a record number of people in the hospital sick with COVID-19. In fact, I think we're second only to California in the most recent reporting I've seen, the number of new patients getting sick. What is it about this wave that is hitting Illinois so hard? For many months now, we've heard the administration say that Illinois has led the country in testing, led the country in early response, in fighting back against COVID-19. What's not working now?
See that we have many more people than we even had at the max of our, quote, wave one. And so we know that the amount of disease is higher. And we know we could have assumed that because as opposed to the first wave, where it was really every county saw COVID, every county had people in the hospital, but it was focused in northern Illinois. It was the majority of cases, the overwhelming majority of cases and hospitalizations and deaths were in the urban centers around Chicago, the surrounding collar counties of Cook. Now, in this second wave, it is diffusely spread through every part of Illinois, every region of Illinois, rural, suburban, and urban. And now the places that didn't see that much before are already past the peak in terms of what they saw from wave one.
Mm-hmm. I think Governor Pritzker even mentioned on Tuesday, he said something to the effect of, you might be forgiven if you thought COVID-19 was largely centered in those big, densely populated regions of the state early on, but this time it's different. This is right around the time of year when a lot of people like to gather with families. College students are preparing to go home for Thanksgiving break, and the state is asking people to limit those gatherings, to reduce those gatherings. Should college students returning home from school go home and see their parents, or are they safer to do so only after having a test? What do you recommend?
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation. There's no perfect answer. A lot of schools are closed after Thanksgiving, so there is no returning back. So there's no place for the kids to go. So it's not even an option to say, you know, stay at school. Like school will not be open and they will not be returning to campus. So the kids will be coming home in many instances, but awareness of the fact that there is the possibility of transmission, that we are essentially now, even though that child was formerly a part of that household, we're now mixing households. We just need to make the appropriate steps going forward.
Can someone take a coronavirus test negative, and then know, okay, our gathering, our family is safe because everybody here just tested negative?
No, I appreciate all the attempts to try to make this work. The issue is that well, let's take Thanksgiving. It's not a single day. It's not a 2-hour concert. It's like a 4-day, long weekend. And so if you had a test, and if this is what you're describing is akin to what I think some of the professional leagues, sports leagues are doing, but that's when they were testing every day. So if you tested today and then went to play, you are assured that you're not infectious to your teammates. And because you're testing again the next day, that day you are again not infectious. But if you test today, we're not in the sports leagues, we don't have daily testing. If you test today, yes, you can be confident that I'm not infectious today and I can enjoy the dinner, but I can't tell you about tomorrow or the next day. So unless you have that repetitive screening that was, exemplified in the professional sports league, you can't really make those same inferences.
And even still, now there are some medical professionals and different hospital groups who are calling for the state to go back into a complete stay-home order because they feel too much strain, and they look down the road and see how high the numbers are pointing, and they feel that it's time to do that already. It stood out to me, your remarks on Tuesday, I believe it was, when a reporter asked, well, why not go there now? And your response was, I don't want to speak for you, but something to the effect of, well, if we did that, then you'd question why we're going so far. It sounded like you were acknowledging there that a big part of this is persuading the public to go along with it.
Absolutely. Nothing works without the public's adoption. And so I keep trying to emphasize how the power is in the hand of the individual residents of Illinois. We can put as many rules forth as we want. We can talk about masks till we're blue in the face, but if people of Illinois, if they don't actually put the mask on, like, what difference does it make what we're saying from the podium? So I really want people to understand how powerful they are, that they have the power of literally life and death in their hands. Their decisions around Thanksgiving to, potentially, unwittingly, unknowingly infect someone who's at very high risk for hospitalization or death, we have the power to not do that. And it's not that we're canceling Thanksgiving. We're saying it's going to look different this year. It won't look like 2019's, but hopefully if we can do this differently in 2020, we can have one in 2021 with all the same people. Have them have something that looks closer to 2019's Thanksgiving.
I think we're running out of time a little bit here. Dr. Ezike, one thing I will say this week of Thanksgiving, many of us are very grateful for experts, for smart people who commit themselves to a task. And I don't know if you ever thought you'd be signing up for a job at the facing the public so commonly, so often, and handling such a taxing issue. So thank you for what you've done.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're back in just a moment. Stay connected to the Capitol all week. Follow us on Twitter at CapConnectIL or watch reports from our Capitol team on WCIA3. You can also find us on Facebook or WCIA.com.
At Blaine's Farm and Fleet, we always offer genuine values on the things you need. But this year, our Black Friday bargains are coming early with incredible pre-Black Friday deals available now throughout the store. Like up to 50% off select dog beds. Buy 3 tires from top brands like Cooper, get 1 free. Select Lego sets are 20% off. Plus, get a free Blaine's Farm and Fleet Toyland semi-truck when you spend $50 on toys. Buy online and pick up your items in our convenient drive-thru.
Find value at Blaine's Farm and Fleet.
Growing from a small downtown store to the Tuscola Home Center today, the Higgins family has served the Douglas County area for 50 years. We would like to take this opportunity to thank our customers for their support. The way consumers purchase today has completely changed throughout the year. But one thing that remains unchanged is a mutual need between local businesses and their community. This holiday season, support your community by shopping local, small, independent businesses. Please check out Tuscola Home Center's diverse inventory. We do it best.
The primary advantage of using an HSA is its simplicity. It's just a savings account with a debit card attached to it with several tax advantages as well. At IMB, we advise and provide education to our employers and employees on how to take full advantage of this solution.
As the weather gets colder, you want your home to be warmer. Seal-tight insulation and slab jacking can help. Locally owned and operated, we're your insulation experts. From your attic to your crawl space, we'll make your comfort go up and your utilities go down.
Your news every hour in primetime is on News Nation on WGN America. American veterans potentially exposed to toxic fumes. News Nation investigates why sick vets can't get the care they need and talk to John Stewart, who's fighting to help the victims.
We always have money for war. We never have money for the warfighter.
News Nation covers your nation every night starting at 8, 7 Central on WGN America. Go to WGNAmerica.com to find WGN America on your cable or satellite provider.
That does it for us this week. Have a great Thanksgiving on Thursday. Be well and stay safe. We hope you'll join us at the same time next week for Capitol Connection. I'm Mark Maxwell. Stay connected to the Capitol all week. Follow us on Twitter at CapConnectIL or watch reports from our Capitol team on WCIA3. You can also find us on Facebook or WCIA.com.